I'm the president of ProVisor, and I've been in the real estate industry since the 90s. A lot of times you ask, why are you guys doing this? Well, our goal here is to help our real estate agents differentiate themselves and to bring value through knowledge. So when you're out in the field, you're better equipped to serve your clients and be classified as an expert in your space. So you can put your questions in the chat below. You can email them to james@provisor.com. But today I have a couple of special guests. We have Jeanette Leeson, who's the president of First Service Title, and we have the illustrious, amazing Maggie Langford, who knows everything about title as well. So our topic today is going to be talking everything title and escrow related. So welcome to the show, Jeanette.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad you're here too. And Maggie, welcome. Awesome. So, well, we're going to jump right in because we got a lot to talk about. If you are, title seems kind of like a mystery. I've heard so many crazy explanations about title. I've had, well, my loan officer never told me that's what it meant, or my realtor said it's supposed to be this. And it seems like there's this, no one really knows, but yet we know we need to have it,
Gotta have it.
Gotta have it, right. So let's just talk about it. What exactly, Jeanette, let's start with you.
Sure.
What exactly does title insurance do?
Well, title insurance really protects the buyer, and it also tells us the chain of title. It is a big process that we do to protect the buyer's rights of a property. If a seller is selling the property, we do have to make sure that the seller has the authority and all the rights to sell the property.
You mean like when I was watching TV, and on TV there's this company that says, hey, somebody can steal your deed and we'll protect that deed. Are you talking like you're researching to make sure the seller actually owns the deed? He's not like a fake or something?
100%. That's exactly, yes. That's exactly what is happening. It's not happening here in Wisconsin as much as I think it is happening out in the East and West Coast. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people impersonating people right now, and they go online now, they see let's say a vacant lot is for sale, and they say, hey, I'm going to sell it. And then they show up to the closing. They're actually they're getting fake IDs. They're getting real IDs. Wow. Social security numbers of people and trying to sell.
So if I'm a buyer, this could be a mess for me.
Yeah, it can be.
Well, Maggie, what is chain of title? What does that mean?
So essentially the chain of title is looking back on the property at the ownership. So you want to make sure that, the owner from 60 years ago deeded the property to the next person in the chain, and then that person was allowed to sell it to the next. So when you are going to sell your property, I want to make sure that you were deeded the property appropriately from the correct person. So we've got to look back to make sure that whomever sold the property to the next did it properly.
So there could be problems in this chain that you're talking about that if I'm a listing agent, I might not even be aware of it, and my seller may not even be aware of it. But when you go back to the history of it, you say, oh my God, this wasn't conveyed properly. That's what you're looking for?
Yes.
Oh.
And back in the day when the interest rates were high, 70s and 80s, a lot of people were actually assuming people's mortgages.
Okay.
So they were not recording any mortgage. They were putting it on the deed of the property in little tiny print. Said buyer now hereby assumes mortgage of the seller for $25,000, $35,000 for the next 35 years. So nobody knows that. It's not another lien on it, but it's on the deed, and we have to analyze every document to make sure that it does get taken care of.
So your goal is when you transfer the property, let's say if I'm selling the property to Maggie, and when I transfer this, you want to make sure that Maggie, not only is that I'm cool, but all the people before I bought the property from, it was all done properly.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's a lot, huh? So my next question is this, kind of plays right into it. Why is it important to have title insurance? Pretty much.
We ensure that. We ensure that you as a buyer have all the rights to the property.
Okay, so I got a question for you. You've been doing this longer than 15 minutes. Yeah. Have you ever seen a situation where title insurance actually had to kick in and to protect the home buyer?
100%. Yeah. I mean,
give us an example.
One of the examples was I had a buyer that was buying a property from an estate. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the seller, when we did the chain of title, we went back 60 years, 40 years ago, actually one other person owned the property with her. It was a divorce situation. And so the wife at the time didn't own 100% of the property.
Oh, my word.
Her ex-husband owned half of it and he had passed away.
So now it's an estate issue.
So it was also an issue where we had no idea how to find the descendants of the deceased ex-husband.
Yeah.
So we actually had to knock on doors. I went to Brookfield and knocked on the door.
Were you
of his-
freaking out?
We were Facebooking people.
We are
I
title
mean,
detectives.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We are
with
title
PI
detectives.
Snoops, we call ourselves sometimes.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we have to do. And we knocked on the door and it was the sister of the deceased. And she said, well, the only person that would have a right to it was, what was his name? Earl. I mean, it was Earl and he lives in Kentucky.
Mhm.
And we found him and he was 97 years old, married to a woman that was 50,
Yeah,
40.
and she was
Good for
excited
her.
And
about
she
this
was
call.
excited because it turns out that they ended up getting about $300,000,
Oh,
half
Yeah.
of the property.
are you kidding me?
No.
And it was like his brother, and then the brother's, 50-year-old wife.
Yeah, she wanted the money, but if in fact that another title company didn't go back that entire 60 years, they would have sold the property to the new buyer and that buyer wouldn't own the property. They would only own 50% of
Oh
it.
my gosh. So one of my questions was, what does the title search involve? It involves you guys knocking on doors
Yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes
We've
it
done a
does.
lot of
I mean, we
things.
really are detectives.
Really? So the things that go wrong in life that make up the stories of life, right? I mean, you got a guy in Kentucky who's 97 years old. He's got himself a wife who's 50, good for him and good for her. They're happy. I'm sure she really loved him.
She
You
did.
get a check for $300,000. That's amazing. But let's talk a little bit the normal guy. What does a title search involve for just more of a normal transaction? What does that look like?
For every title transaction, we have to search the public records. We look at the deeds, we look at the mortgages, we make sure the judgments are satisfied. Sometimes when we do a search, let's say there's a judgment against a seller. That means somebody didn't pay their credit card bill for 3 years. So now there's a judgment against the seller and we have to make sure that it gets paid in order for them to sell the house, because now that judgment is attached to the property.
Okay.
So if that doesn't
When you say
get paid,
attached to property, explain that for those maybe who are a little bit newer in the business.
Sure.
What does that mean?
so a judgment is out there for 10 years and it attaches to the property if it's in your name. So if you own a property, let's say in Waukesha County, and you have a judgment in Waukesha County against you, that judgment now attaches to the house and is an enforceable lien on the property.
Really?
So at the time of sale, if that judgment doesn't get paid, that creditor can come back and ask you as the buyer for money because it is attached to your house.
Really? So that means like the loan would be a first mortgage becomes a secondary lien?
Technically, yes.
Okay. So that as a lender, that's a concern of mine. I want to make sure that those judgments are satisfied before I put my lien on that house.
Correct. And that's why the lender needs title insurance as well, because the lender wants to make sure they are the first and primary owner position of the property.
And this can be for spouses too, for example, or anybody in title. So let's say we get married, you already own the property, but then you deed me onto title. If I get a judgment within that portion of time that I've been in title, that will attach.
Oh,
So
be careful who you marry. Right. Okay. So here's a question. So just for everybody here, we are talking about title insurance. This is a complicated subject. A lot of people don't fully understand it. We have Jeanette here from First Service Title and Closing. They're located right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Maggie and Jeanette work together. They're amazing. I've known them for years and they're super smart women. So you're welcome. If you could just explain the difference between a seller's policy, what the seller's policy is and what the buyer's policy is. Because I think people get confused.
Sure.
Sometimes.
You want me to take it?
yeah.
All right. So there's something called an owner's policy and there's something called the loan policy. The owner's policy of title insurance insures the buyer's rights and interest in the property.
Okay.
So the lender's policy, which you can call it a buyer's policy, but really we're insuring the lender.
Okay.
We're ensuring that the lender has first lien position.
What is the seller's policy insurance?
It ensures that the buyer has the rights and owns the property free and clear, other than any encumbrance they would take on after that.
So if it's a cash deal, then you just need a seller's policy?
Yep, then we just do an owner's policy.
Okay.
of title insurance.
Do you have, Maggie, you've done zillions of closings. I mean, everybody loves it when Maggie shows up to do the closing. The question I have for you is, when you have a cash deal, do you ever have some people that say, I don't need a seller's policy?
Oh, sure. And I also think that the confusion there too is a lot of times somebody thinks that the buyer needs a policy, but really we are just ensuring that the seller is giving the buyer the free and clear title.
Okay, so if you're paying cash, you don't need a lender's policy because there's no loan, but would you recommend that they still have a seller's policy?
Yes, 100%. A title company cannot be involved if there is no title insurance
I
offered.
did not know that.
Yes.
You just can't administer the closing?
No.
Look at that. I've been doing this almost 30 years. I learned something new right now.
No,
Great.
that's why it's 100% necessary. We can't cut any checks or be part of the transaction
Okay,
unless we are issuing insurance on the deal.
okay, that's good to know. Maggie, I got a question for you. A realtor takes a listing. How can they find out about some things proactively before it becomes a problem later down the road? So let me just give you an example, and you see way more transactions than I do probably. We had a client, they were moving here from Michigan, they're buying their new house, they're all excited and we're clear to close. The lender did everything right, everything's done, and a couple days before closing, boop, on the seller side, there was a tax lien, and by the time you took the pay up on the mortgage, the second mortgage, and the tax lien, it exceeded the sale price of the house, and we're like, oh, what's the big deal? And IRS said, yeah, you owe me $75,000. We're not going to release our lien position. The whole deal blew up, and our clients were living in a hotel, homeless. How could something like that be prevented?
Ask questions. You should be asking a lot of questions. And I understand that it might sound personal, right? I mean, you certainly don't have to dive as deep as, people's inner feelings, but
Oh my. Happy Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
everybody. We're a little sensitive today, okay?
But you really do need to be asking questions. You need to ask if there are any other people who might have an interest in the property. You should be asking people if they are aware of any liens or judgments against them. There is this thing in Wisconsin, we call it CCAP, but it is searching the Wisconsin Circuit Court system. It's public record. You might not be able to, on your own, search for federal or state tax liens, but it can't hurt you to jump onto that court system just to type in somebody's name. Sometimes people are embarrassed of judgments or liens that might be out there against them and might not want to share that with you. So I do think it's important to ask a few dirty questions and do a little investigating of your own. Especially what I mentioned too with other people potentially being in title, or if you have an elderly person, maybe someone who's in the hospital or hospice, there could be, a deceased spouse who's still in title and maybe that wasn't handled properly. So you've got to ask questions.
Okay, so Jeanette,
Mhm.
most people maybe don't understand how the whole IRS thing works. Like in my career, I've seen a handful of times where people owed the IRS money and didn't realize that it was attached to their house. Just talk to that for a second. Just how does that work, and how would a real estate agent say, hey, by the way, I know I'm going to list your house for you, but are you delinquent on any federal tax debt? I mean, how is that attached to the house? How does that affect title?
All right, well, the IRS will get their money eventually, no matter what. They want money.
Yeah.
So they file what's called a federal or a state tax lien.
Okay.
Okay, so the IRS is, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue is it'll be on CCAP, what Maggie talked about.
Okay.
But the IRS is a federal system, and they only process everything through the Register of Deeds.
So the IRS won't show up on CCAP?
No.
Oh,
will not.
Good to know.
It
Okay,
will
so
not.
if I'm a real estate agent, I go on Wisconsin Circuit Court Access, I'm not going to see a federal tax lien there.
No.
How would I know then?
You wouldn't.
You ask the customer, they'd be like, oh, I don't know. And then you find out when the seller's policy comes out, right?
Right. So it's a good idea as a realtor, if you do want to talk to us, just, hey, I have this listing, I have a feeling, really all of what we do is building relationships with people.
Mhm.
And you can kind of get a take on them and say, hey, let me just run this by a title company. Can you
So
guys
real estate agents should just check in with was a title company and find out.
We're more than willing to help you look at the courthouse records and
Mhm.
see if there's any federal tax liens, because they're big. They
So-
can blow up a deal.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to interject also. I think in part of this is, it is important for you to get your title orders placed as soon as possible. If you've got that offer to purchase, it's signed and ready to go, you should be ordering title right away, because the sooner we get to that search, the sooner we're going to find out about some of these pitfalls that may happen.
Do you see that maybe lenders and real estate agents are maybe a little slack in ordering that right away?
100%. People, it's a busy time. Everyone gets it.
Okay.
You get all excited, you have the offer, and it's crazy, and you want to get the deal done, but the sooner we get the information, the better you're going to be in the end.
Okay, everybody, we don't want to be on Santa's naughty list next year. So when you get that offer, you heard it from the big boss and her sidekick, get the title ordered right away.
Because this is another process that we do. Every title order that we get, if you give it to us a month ahead of time, 2 months ahead of time, we always order a verbal update. So when we go back and look at courthouse records aren't up to the date. We are usually 15 days behind.
Really?
So the day of the closing, we also order, and the day before the closing, a verbal update. And we update the search all over again. So we cover that gap of 45 days ago.
Okay.
So the sooner we know things, the more time we have to clear them up if there are issues.
Excellent. Just a reminder, you're watching Ask ProVisor. We are here with Jeanette Leeson. She's the president of First Service Title, and Maggie, who is an expert in title and closings. And we're just talking about weird stuff about title and how you can learn and be prepared so you don't have problems later, and you can look like a rock star in front of your borrower or your seller, and you can deal with this stuff up front. I tell my own staff, knowledge is power. The more you learn, the more you earn. You want to be empowered. So when your client talks to you, you look as like you're the expert, and the best thing they ever did was to hire you to be their real estate agent. Jeanette, couple top issues you see on the seller side.
Old mortgages are big.
Old mortgages.
Let's say home equity line of credit. They're about the biggest problem that we have in our industry, because people don't understand when they take out a home equity line of credit. A lot of times they just think it's, to fix a roof, and this bank is going to give me $20,000 to fix my roof. They don't realize that the bank put a lien on their property.
Oh, so it's not a credit card.
Nope, but it's a loan. It's a mortgage. And a lot of times people had paid it off 10 years ago, but they never received the satisfaction.
So it shows up as an outstanding lien on the property, and when they go to sell it, it's
still there. So usually we can't find the banks anymore either. They've been changed several different times. So it's a process of going back through the new owner of the bank to find out if they can satisfy the document.
More investigating.
Yes.
We're always
We're investigating.
We have on the case Detective Maggie and Detective Jeanette here. Okay. So Detective Maggie, what are some of the top issues you see from a buyer's side?
Oh, let's see here. Gosh, as far as the title goes, I'm
Let me talk about it, because actually it's on my mind. So another question that Jim was wanting to talk about is in Wisconsin, you have the choice of having a bifurcated closing. So you can have one title company handle the seller side and another title company handle the buyer side of the transaction. And here in the Milwaukee area, we do a lot of bifurcated closings. And I'm a huge advocate for bifurcated closings, because what that means is now we have two sets of eyes on every single title that happens. So every single transaction that we are involved in a bifurcated closing, one title company is handling the seller side, we are handling the buyer side. What we have found over and over and over again is the title company handling the seller side might have forgotten something.
Oh.
Okay, so either they missed a judgment, they missed somebody in title, they missed a water sewer hookup. We come into this all the time, and I love having another set of eyes on a deal.
What we do know is First Service Title and Closing doesn't miss those. You're catching mistakes from somebody else.
Yes, that's exactly
well,
true.
and what we do, also is we check proration. So a lot of times we're getting our numbers when we're handling the buyer side from the seller side's title company.
Got it.
And I don't want to say we're copying them, but that's basically our guideline. And then what we're doing is we're looking at the special assessment letters that are pulled on the seller side. Another good reason to get your title orders in advance. And we check the prorations that they give for water, sewer, for taxes, refuse, recycling, things like that. And we are catching a lot of mistakes.
Okay, so I have a question. So, for example, in Madison, Wisconsin area, that area, for those of our real estate agents who are from that area, they don't do almost no bifurcated closings. It's the seller side, buyer side are the same place. So occasionally I would assume that happens with here in Milwaukee as well,
Yes.
correct? So when that happens, do you as a best practice or do other title companies as best practice have two sets of eyes look at it? Like, okay, Susie did it. Now Maggie's going to just double check Susie's work to make sure. I mean, how do you ensure that mistakes don't happen?
Well,
Mistakes do happen in life.
Mistakes do happen. Yes, we are all human, but at First Service Title, I mean, we really do have probably 6 sets of eyes on every single file. We're big on somebody writes it up, somebody proofs it. Okay. Somebody preps the closing statement, somebody proofs it, and then another person closes it. So we have a lot of different eyes on every single file because we are human, and I do like to just have our eyes dotted and
we're extremely cross-trained, so we all can do each other's jobs.
Okay. Which is important because we just found out that another title company made a mistake and a 97-year-old guy and his 50-year-old girlfriend or wife got 300 grand over somebody who didn't catch it years ago, right?
Exactly.
Not a way to build wealth, but you're at least protecting your clients.
Well, on that same note, we just had this happen 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago, where the seller was in Pewaukee and they needed to hook up to the sewer line upon sale. And the title company the other title company didn't catch it. Yeah. It was $6,500 that they didn't have on their closing statement. And we had to call them and say, what's going on? We see it on your special assessment letter. What are you doing about it? She said, oh, no, the seller doesn't want to do anything about it.
The seller doesn't want to pay it.
Of course he doesn't. He can sell the property without paying the $6,500. So he didn't sell the property until he paid that $6,500. And that's how we found that the problem with the other title company.
So all this stuff is super important, right?
Yeah. It's
My
very
goodness.
important.
Can I interject one more thing? Because I love to talk when it's
That's
coming
why
to
you're
me.
here today, Maggie.
When it comes, just talking about the buyer side of the closing statement or the title transaction. For you realtors, something I really want to make sure that is if you have a buyer agency agreement, make sure you are getting that to any party involved in the transaction. Because when we are preparing a buyer side closing statement, a lot of times the figures are coming from the seller side in the bifurcated closings.
Yes.
We do not have your buyer agency agreement unless you have provided it to us. And so we see time and time again, after the closing, once checks are already dispersed, emails or calls, well, where's my buyer agency fee? Well, I didn't know about it. So if we don't have that, it's not getting on the closing statement. And you should be looking at that closing statement prior to closing so that you're getting paid. I mean, that's good money.
Is it the lender's responsibility to provide that to you or the real estate agent's responsibility?
It is the agent's responsibility.
What about, like, a lot of times there's an admin fee of $200, $300, $400, $500. Who's responsible to communicate that to the title company?
I would think the person who's going to get that check.
Okay.
You as a lender, that's not a fee. Well, you do need to worry about it, right? Because if it's going on a closing statement, that's money that your buyer has to provide.
Right, correct.
Which would affect the bottom line.
But if it gets missed, it's because someone didn't tell you about it.
Correct.
It's not the lender's fault. It's really the real estate agent needs to be proactive on top of their buyer agency agreement and any admin fees that need to be added to the CD.
Correct.
Right?
If we don't have it, we are unaware of it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about judgments for a second. All right. So we talked, how title is looking for all that stuff. And if seller has it, they got to be satisfied. We know that. But what about if a buyer has a judgment?
So if a buyer has a judgment, technically we do not show it on a title.
Okay.
And the reason for that, we would show it on an owner's policy if it's a cash deal. Let's say if it's a cash deal, we would definitely show it on an owner's policy. But the thing is, with the purchase money mortgage, the liens, any judgments are going to be in second lien position.
Okay.
So a purchase money mortgage takes first lien position to the property. With that being said, you as the lender need to know that when they do go to refinance later on, those judgments are now attached to the property.
Okay.
So yes, they're behind your mortgage. They're in second lien position, but they are now attached to your.
So if I'm a buyer and I didn't pay my car bill. I got a repo and I owed a deficiency and I owe, GM Financial, I owe them $3,000. And now there's a judgment against me and it shows up on my credit report. I can buy the house because the lien will be there and then the judgment's going to get attached to that. But if I want to refinance that house, it's got to be paid.
Correct.
Yep, or sell.
Or
Mhm.
if I sell the house, I got to pay it too?
You gotta
Yep,
pay it.
absolutely.
Oh, but I can buy the house, but I just can't sell it or
That's
refinance
right.
it. Okay.
Not till you pay that off.
All right, so now all of a sudden, somewhere there's either the customer makes a mistake, the customer lies. I mean, I'm sure that wouldn't happen, but just occasionally, maybe somebody might lie about something. Whatever it is, there needs to be a claim. How does a claim process work?
So the claim process works, once your title insurance policy is issued, you now have a policy of title insurance and you can go back on that and say, hey, there's a defect in my title. So you would go to the title company first that issued the commitment, and then you would file a claim. It's just a legal document. You just say, hey, here's my policy number. I need to file a claim. And then that comes to me and I have to take it to my underwriter and we have to fight it. So we either go to court or we dig deeper. We try to find the answer to the problem and see if it was something that we were responsible for missing, or if it is even in fact a valid lien or claim on the.
Okay, so here's a question, okay? Theoretical, hypothetical. I close on my new house. I'm watching the Brewers game. Brewers are beating the Cubs, of course they are. And sorry, everybody. And the doorbell rings. And I go to the door and the guy says, are you Susie Smith? No, not Susie. My name's James. Okay, well, I'm looking for Susie. Well, I bought the house from Susie Smith, right? Okay, well, hey, that new roof on your house, Susie never paid me. And you owe me $15,000 because that roof's on the house. I'd like a check right now. Oh, I didn't know about that. And Susie at closing signed an affidavit saying all liens are paid. What happens?
Then it would be a title insurance claim. And we would.
What do
have
I
to
do?
go-
I'm like freaking out right now because Sunday afternoon I'm watching the Brewers and I'm in a really good mood because they're beating the Cubs. I just found out that I owe a guy 15 grand. What do
Call
I
your
do?
title company. Call your title company, tell them.
I call Maggie?
Yeah, you call Maggie.
Okay.
Maggie will handle it.
On Sunday?
Yeah, she may not
Probably
answer
not
on
Sunday.
Sunday.
Call the title company. I tell the company,
Call the
this is what happened.
Yeah.
And then the title company takes over?
And then here we take over and once again, we have to be detectives again and
Okay.
figure out where it went wrong and who was actually owed money.
And this is why you have to have title
That's
insurance, right?
exactly why.
Because it protects me. If I bought a house, then you're protecting me.
Yep.
Like otherwise, if I didn't have that, I would do 15 grand, right?
Yeah.
Because he puts a judgment against the house and because it's a construction lien, right?
If there was an actual lien filed, yes.
And if you as an agent too know that potentially there's some work being done to the property, if you're the buyer's agent, if you're the listing agent, you should really be getting lien waivers.
Okay. Is there a timeline on that? Like, should you go back a year, 5 years, 5 minutes?
I think it's
6
6
months.
months to a, yeah.
6 months to a year.
Mhm.
It depends on what actually was done. If you're talking about something that's 30-some thousand, if it's a year, I would still get a lien waiver,
Okay.
Mhm.
just to be safe.
I mean, if the neighbor who's not really a plumber, but fixed the drain, I don't know that that's necessary. Really, $500 or more would be an important thing to get a lien waiver for. Then you have that. That's the proof that this contractor cannot come back on the property.
So if a lien or something like that is found after closing, this is what we're talking about. This is stuff that fell through the cracks or somebody misrepresented something or just an error happened, right? Okay,
can.
that makes sense. Let's talk about deeds. Maggie, how long does it take to record a deed? Is it a month, a week, a year, 6
It
months?
should be quick.
What's define
So
quick?
we want to get our deeds recorded within 3 days, and in a perfect world, we want them recorded by the next day.
Why?
Because you never know what could happen. Unfortunately, accidents happen. You could step out on the street and get hit by a bus.
Oh,
So we need to make sure that
don't
you
tell
are.
my kids that.
Life happens and you just bought that property. You put your money down.
Yeah.
You are the owner of that property. Those need to be recorded right away. The only thing I see that happens that really would delay something is not getting a transfer return quick enough in bifurcated closing situations.
Okay.
you know, and that's between title companies. But yes, those deeds, those mortgages should be getting recorded ASAP.
How do they get recorded? Like, okay, so the customer signs the deed, which is obviously different than the mortgage, which is different than the note. The deed gets executed. How does it get recorded? Is it like you do it in a computer? Does it go to the register of deeds and somebody down there is doing it, or what happens?
We are electronically recording them.
Okay.
So I do think there are a few different programs. We use Simplifile, and so I am scanning that in, I am uploading it, entering the information, and right now things are getting recorded really quickly.
So the recording of the deed falls on the title company?
Correct.
And you do it electronically?
Yes.
So let's just say it's the end of June, it's a huge month, everyone's getting their closings done, and you got a stack of deeds that need to be recorded. And so you're doing your best, like you would, but it took 3 days. In that window of 3 days, the buyer has a heart attack and dies. Does that affect anything?
No, because technically, yeah, but I don't think it would really cause a problem in the end. The big thing is, the biggest problem with not recording it on time is more so for mortgage purposes.
For us,
Yeah,
the lender.
For the lender.
Okay.
It gives you more of liability.
Got
So if we didn't
For
record,
liens to get squeezed in
yes,
there
like
somehow?
another lien would come in.
Oh, so let's say there was a judgment that came in, it happened the day after closing, and that person who had the judgment ran down there and got it recorded right away before I got the mortgage recorded.
Correct.
Nah,
That's more of the problem.
you
that
girls
we
are
would run
very
into.
smart.
Yeah,
That's
that would be
crazy
more
stuff.
problem.
This is how important title is, you guys. We just want to blow it off, say, oh yeah, here it is, da, 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 da. You have to have smart people doing this. Like sometimes, you know, the sweetness of a low price is long forgotten after the sourness of poor service or lack of knowledge. You are smart, so you've seen things and you're preparing us for problems that could happen down the road. That's why it's called insurance, right? Okay, here's a misnomer. Quick claim or quit claim? Which is it?
Quit.
Quit, I quit.
You quit.
Tell me why. First of all, everybody says it's quick claim, but why is it called quit?
Because you're quitting your interest in the property.
Oh,
You're getting out.
quit. Okay.
Yep.
So a quit claim deed, like give me a situation when you are quitting your interest in a property.
Well, let's just say, you know, you want to get divorced or you are divorced. You are part of the divorce proceeds, which is another thing that we have to look up every single time we check properties is we're looking at mortgage or marital settlement agreements, looking to see who is actually granted the property. So usually part of the MSA is petitioner, which would be maybe the wife is going to get the property. Then it does state in there, the husband has to quit claim his interest in the property over to the wife within so many days or upon sale.
Okay.
So per that agreement, we would have to draft a quit claim deed and the husband would have to sign his interest out of the property.
Wisconsin's a marital property state, as you all know, one of 9 states in the union that have different rules. Illinois is not. So now all of a sudden you have a joint mortgage and you go through a divorce and the husband quit claims himself off the deed, but there's still a joint mortgage out. Speak to that.
He is still on that mortgage and there is no way to get him off unless you refinance or sell the property.
Okay, did you guys hear that? Quit claim does not absolve him
No.
from the liability of being on that house.
It is still on the
Correct.
credit report. It
Yeah,
is.
right. A
gonna
lot of
show
people
up.
don't know that. We get in our office like, no, I just have to be quit claimed off. Just no, that's not how it works
Nope.
in Wisconsin. Other states it's differently, but in Wisconsin, which is what we're talking about mainly, even though we are licensed in 20 other states across the union, marital property, if you're in a marital property state, that doesn't absolve you from the liability.
That's correct.
Okay, good to know. When you do a quit claim, this is maybe, I'll try to keep it simple. Is there a transfer tax involved in anything like that?
It just depends on the relationship between the parties
Okay.
involved. So in Wisconsin, husband and wife, parent, child, there is no transfer fee. But
Siblings, there's a transfer tax.
yeah, and it's calculated $3 per thousand of what the real estate is valued at per your interest in the real estate. So if I was my husband and I, or not my husband and I, let's say
We're
my
sisters.
sister and I, yeah, Maggie and I, we are first services.
We are so sisters.
Owned a property together, we would each own 50% of the property. So my transfer fee would only be based on 50% of the property.
Okay, what if there's no lien on the property? Do they take the value of the property, or is the interest equated to the mortgage on the property?
They would be equated to what the tax bill says.
Okay,
As
got it.
the fair market value.
Okay, so we're talking about title insurance. We're going to be wrapping this up here, but I got a question for all of our investors out there. If you're an agent that's helping real estate investors, so they want to buy the house, they have a hard time getting the loan in just an LLC's name. Let's say they form an LLC for liability reasons. So they get the house, they buy the house in the name of themselves. John Smith buys the house. And then after closing, they want to quit claim the house into an LLC. Is there a transfer tax incurred for that?
If the LLC is a sole member LLC, there is no transfer fee.
Okay,
If it is multiple members of the LLC and they are all related, there is no transfer.
okay.
But if they are not related, if it is just, two partners that are rehabbing properties, there is going to be a transfer fee.
So me and my buddy, we buy this house and we're going to flip it, but we want to put it into our Two Brothers LLC. Even though we're not biological brothers, we're going to pay a transfer tax to get it out of our individual names and put it into the LLC.
That's correct.
Okay. And when I sell that property, do I have to put it back in my name, or can I sell it in the LLC?
You can sell it in the LLC.
Okay, good to know. All right, thank you for that. So, last question. Zombie liens. Have you heard of those before?
Yeah.
Talk about zombies. Okay. This isn't the apocalypse, everybody. But I saved the best for last. We have these zombie liens. I don't know if they come from aliens or spaceships or under the earth or whatever. I don't know, but talk about zombie liens.
Well, there's all different kinds of zombie liens out there. One of the, I guess, hardest ones that we come by are just people, you get into a car wreck and you don't know this person from Adam, but they want $3,000 from you.
Okay.
And this could have been 7 years ago. Now, this person is nowhere to be found. We can't find them because, we've done our detective work and they're just, maybe they moved out of state.
Okay.
So sometimes what we have to do is either the title company will escrow for that judgment, which we would escrow 1.5 times, or we would actually escrow with the clerk of courts, and that money would be held with the clerk of courts until that judgment is passed, which would be 10 years.
Okay. So let's go way back. A company called Blazer Finance. I don't think it exists anymore.
I
Okay.
remember.
So Blazer Finance, you default on a loan, to Blazer Finance. And now all of a sudden you're going to sell your house and there's a lien on title for Blazer Finance and they don't exist. What happens?
Sometimes they're usually on judgments, they actually name an attorney involved with Blazer Finance. We can contact that law firm and find out if they still handle it, or if it went to a creditor, another, like a collection agent.
Okay.
But the attorney could sometimes provide the payoff letter.
So at the end of the day, they're not getting out of it.
Usually not.
So if that money sits in escrow, is there a time frame on that, or it could be there?
Well, the judgment is good for 10 years.
Okay.
So if the judgment was, granted in 2023, we would have to hold the money until 2033.
Okay. So if they pop up on seller's title, do you guys help facilitate that? Does your company get involved in that, helping these sellers, or like, hey, here's what came up, you and the real estate agent figure it out?
That is exactly what we do when we are handling the seller side of the transaction.
Which one? They tell them to figure it out, or you get it?
We figure it out.
Okay, got it.
Yes, we 100% figure it out.
Okay.
And, it's, again, just what we do. That we do more detective work, we figure it out. And if we can't figure it out, we ask our underwriter, hey, will you insure over this? Let's say it's for $600
Okay.
from 8 years ago. My underwriter might just say, you know what, in this case, we're okay with taking on the liability of not paying that $600 off because we can't find that person.
So that'd be an exception.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would definitely, we do that in order to facilitate the transaction and make it happen.
Okay, so you're trying to just do some common sense with this within the comfort level of the insurance company who's actually going to pay out a claim if there's a claim.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes
Because
sense.
in the end, we're an insurance company. So, it's all about, our liability and how we can.
Okay, so Maggie, as we close here, share something that you'd like to share that would be beneficial for our real estate agents to share with their buyers.
I think, again, it's important to be transparent with your buyers. it can be a long process or it can be a short process, and encourage them, I think most importantly, to work really well with their lender. I think a big frustration for buyers a lot of times is, why are they asking me for so many things? Well, it's important that you get to that closing table. And so really encourage them, to get those W-2s or those pay stubs or those bank statements to the lender in a timely manner, so that we can all get to the closing table. The sooner I have a clear to close from the lender as a title company, the sooner I can balance those figures and we can get to the closing table on time.
Good. Okay. Excellent advice. Jeanette, from a seller's perspective, what would you want to share in closing with our real estate agents who are watching today? You're deemed an expert in this industry. You've been doing it way longer than 15 minutes. You started when you were 5, but you're an advanced student, which we appreciate that. But share with them what they can share with their sellers that would be super valuable and beneficial.
And the biggest thing I'm gonna talk about is wire fraud. Just talk to your sellers, communicate with them. Do not give them title companies wiring instructions yourself. Have the title company give them the wiring instructions. Let the sellers talk to the title company. We love to communicate. We are an office full of people that love to talk, and we want to get to know the sellers as well. I want all sellers to know they should be getting a phone call from somebody verifying their wiring instructions.
Okay.
Buyers too.
Wire fraud is it's insane. There's criminals everywhere trying to get people's money. And this is a huge transaction for most people.
Okay. I know I said we were wrapping up, but I didn't even think about wire fraud today. You got a buyer who's got to wire their $200,000 down payment, and they get an email in, and it says First Service right on it, or I'll say ABC Title Company right on it, and they see the wire instructions, and they look at the phone number, and they don't realize maybe the last digit's off by 1, and they just wire the money, and then they get to the closing, and the money's not there. Is that insured?
No. It is not insured.
No, it is not insured. There is no recourse and no claim, and it does happen every single day, doesn't it?
Second.
Didn't happen to one of our borrowers, but I had a real estate agent in here last week telling us about how their customer lost $400,000 in a wire fraud scam. So that gets my attention. That freaks me out. So if I need to wire money, talk to me. I get an email from you. It looks official. It says First Service on it. Everything's the same. But you're saying I need to talk to a human.
Yes, you need to call First Service Title. You need to Google it even. First Service Title, you can look at the letterhead because like Jim said, they can change the number by 1 number. Google First Service Title. You will see my website. You will see my phone number, and you will get an actual person to talk to. And you will verify
So they shouldn't even call the number in the email signature, because that could be
You do not want to do that.
Yep, jump online.
Yep, jump online, look at First Service Title's website, and just talk to people on the telephone, not via email, because that's where a lot of this starts, is via email.
And the wiring instructions should come secure. And 99.9% of the time, those wiring instructions will not change from the day you got them until the date you're going to wire that money. Title companies are not changing their banking on the regular.
No.
No.
So they have to verify. Email is not secure. It is not proper. They should pick up the phone. First, verify that the number is correct. Pick up the phone, call, verify who that is. Maybe even have them call back or something like that. Just triple check, because you send wire somebody, you lose the money.
That's
correct?
right.
It's gone.
Okay. Well, I could sit here and tell a couple of stories about clients that sat in my office that said that they got scammed at they were mad at the lender, but it wasn't the lender's fault. It wasn't my company, it was another company. And ended up being a situation where they lost the money. I mean, it was just so sad. Like, I've seen people crying at my desk. Our down payment is gone forever. And that money hits the bank accounts, and it's sent 17 different ways quickly. The FBI gets involved, but at the end of the day, it's a legit thing. So as we end with this, verify those wire instructions. Super critical. Thanks for bringing that up. We didn't talk about that today, but that is, talk about a bummer. You lose your down payment money that quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, my name is James Mercado. I'm the president and CEO of ProVisor. This has been Ask ProVisor. I've had Jeanette and Maggie with me. I really appreciate you coming on the show today,
Thank you very
Maggie.
much.
Thanks for having us.
It's been awesome. And share this. We'll share this video. We'll make it shareable. It'll be on our YouTube channel as well. And share it with other friends of yours that maybe not quite sure on the title industry. And if you have a customer who's like an advanced student, they want to understand more what this title and they don't get it, just have them watch the video. All right. Thank you guys. Make it a great day. Bye-bye.